Humphrey Bogart found a wounded soldier backstage. What he did next changed the night forever. December 1943, Hollywood, California. The air outside the Pantages Theater carried the scent of rain and cigarette smoke. Inside, the seats were filled with men and women dressed in their finest, waiting for the Hollywood Canteen benefit show to begin. The war was raging across Europe and the Pacific. Every family in America knew someone who had shipped out. Some of those boys would never come home. Humphrey Bogart stood in the wings, adjusting his tie. He was 44 years old. His face had been carved by time and cigarettes into something that looked like truth itself. He had already become a star. Casablanca had premiered just 1 year earlier, and the world had fallen in love with Rick Blaine, the cynical saloon owner with a heart he pretended not to have. But tonight was not about movies. Tonight was about something real. The canteen shows raised money for the troops, brought entertainment to soldiers passing through Los Angeles, and reminded everyone that Hollywood could do more than dream. It could serve. Bogart checked his watch. 20 minutes until curtain. He had a monologue prepared, something patriotic but not preachy. He hated preachy. He believed in action. Not speeches. Words were cheap. What you did when no one was watching, that was character. He walked down the narrow corridor behind the stage. The walls were lined with old posters from vaudeville days, faded photographs of performers long forgotten. The floorboards creaked under his leather shoes. He could hear the murmur of the crowd through the walls, that low hum of anticipation that always preceded a show. And then he heard something else, a sound that did not belong. It was faint at first, a ragged breath, a stifled groan. Bogart stopped walking. He tilted his head, listening. The sound came again from a small door to his left, marked storage. He pushed it open. The room was dark, cluttered with old props and costume racks. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting weak yellow light. And there, slumped against a stack of wooden crates, was a young man in uniform. He could not have been older than 20. His face was pale, beaded with sweat. His army jacket was unbuttoned, and beneath it his shirt was stained dark. He was pressing his hand against his side, and his fingers were trembling. Bogart stepped closer. The young man looked up. His eyes were glassy, distant, like he was seeing something far away. "Hey," Bogart said quietly. "Hey, soldier, what happened to you?" The young man blinked. Recognition flickered across his face. You're him. You're Bogart. That's right. And you're hurt. What happened?" The soldier swallowed hard. "I didn't want to cause any trouble. I needed to sit down for a minute." Bogart knelt beside him. He could see now that the stain on the shirt was old, not fresh. A wound that had been treated but not healed. The kind of wound a man carried home from the front. "You came from overseas," Bogart said. It was not a question. The soldier nodded. "Got back 3 weeks ago. They shipped me home after—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "After what happened in Italy?" Bogart did not ask what happened in Italy. He had heard enough stories. He had visited enough hospitals. He knew that some things could not be spoken, only carried. "What's your name, son?" "Private First Class Daniel Holloway, sir. From Indiana." "Indiana." Bogart nodded slowly. "Good state. Good people." Daniel tried to smile, but it came out wrong. "I just wanted to see the show. I heard you'd be here. I don't know what I thought. I just wanted to feel normal for one night." Bogart studied the young man's face. He saw the exhaustion there, the weight of things no 20-year-old should have to carry. He saw the pride, too, the refusal to ask for help, the determination to stand on his own even when his body was failing him. "How'd you get backstage?" Daniel's cheeks flushed. "I snuck in, through the loading dock. I know I shouldn't have. I couldn't afford a ticket, and I didn't want to sit in the back. I wanted to see it up close, see if it was real." "If what was real?" "All of it, the lights, the music, the people laughing." Daniel's voice cracked. "I forgot what that sounds like. Laughter. Real laughter. Not the kind you force when you're scared. The kind that comes from your chest." Bogart was silent for a long moment. He could hear the orchestra warming up in the pit. He could hear the stage manager calling 5 minutes. He could feel the pull of the spotlight, the responsibility of the audience waiting for him. But he did not move. "You're bleeding through your bandage," he said finally. Daniel looked down. A small red bloom was spreading across his shirt. "It does that sometimes. The doctors said it would take time. They said I should rest, but I couldn't rest, not tonight." Bogart stood up. He shrugged off his jacket and draped it over Daniel's shoulders. "Stay here. Don't move." "Sir, I said don't move." Bogart walked out of the storage room and down the corridor. He found the stage manager, a nervous man named Harold, who was clutching a clipboard like a lifeline. "Harold, I need a medic, now." "A medic? Mr. Bogart, the show starts in 4 minutes. Then you have 3 minutes to find one. There's a wounded soldier backstage. He needs attention." Harold's face went pale. "Herr Soldier? How did he—" "It doesn't matter how, it matters what we do about it. Get the house doctor, get anyone with medical training, and get me a chair." "A chair?" "A good one, with cushions, and bring it to the wings, stage left." Harold stared at him. "Mr. Bogart, I don't understand." "You don't have to understand. You just have to do it." Bogart turned and walked back to the storage room. Daniel was still there, still pressing his hand against his side, still trying to hold himself together. "Help is coming," Bogart said. "But I need you to do something for me." Daniel looked up. "Anything. I need you to watch the show." What? You came here to see a show. You snuck in, you risked your wound opening up. You did everything you could to be here tonight. I'm not going to let that be for nothing. You're going to watch this show, from the best seat in the house." Daniel shook his head. "Sir, I can't. I shouldn't even be here. I shouldn't. If someone finds out, someone has found out, me. And I'm telling you that you belong here. You belong anywhere you want to be. You earned that right. You understand me?" The young man's eyes filled with tears. He blinked them back, but not fast enough. One slid down his cheek, cutting a clean line through the dust on his face. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything, just watch the show." The house doctor arrived, a grey-haired man named Patterson, who had been sitting in the audience. He examined Daniel quickly, professionally, his hands steady and sure. "The wound was not serious," he said. "The stitches had pulled, but the bleeding was superficial. With fresh bandages and some rest, the young man would be fine, but rest would have to wait. Because Bogart had other plans, he helped Daniel to his feet. He led him through the backstage corridors, past the chorus girls and the comedians and the musicians, past the stagehands who stared but did not question. He brought him to a chair that had been placed in the wings just off stage left, with a clear view of the entire performance. "Sit," Bogart said. Daniel sat. His face was a mixture of disbelief and gratitude, and something that looked almost like hope. "You're going to watch from here. You're going to see everything. And when I come off stage, we're going to talk. You and me, about Indiana, about Italy, about whatever you want." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Bogart smiled. It was not the cynical smirk that audiences knew from the screen. It was something softer, something real. "Welcome to Hollywood, kid." The lights dimmed, the orchestra swelled, and Humphrey Bogart walked out onto the stage. The applause hit him like a wave. 1,000 people, rising to their feet, clapping and cheering and whistling. He stood there for a moment, letting it wash over him, feeling the heat of the spotlights on his face. But his mind was not on the audience. His mind was on the young man in the wings, the young man who had crossed an ocean to fight a war and had come home with wounds that would never fully heal, the young man who had snuck into a theater just to remember what laughter sounded like. Bogart raised his hand, and the applause faded. "Good evening," he said. His voice was low, gravelly, unmistakable. "I'm supposed to tell you some jokes tonight, make you laugh, make you forget about the war for a couple of hours." He paused. The audience waited. "But I'm not going to do that, not yet, because something happened backstage just now, something that reminded me why we're really here." He told them about Daniel. Not everything. He left out the sneaking in, left out the wound reopening. But he told them about a young soldier from Indiana who had come home from Italy, a young man who just wanted to hear people laugh again. "That's what this is about," Bogart said. "Not the movies, not the fame, not any of that nonsense. It's about the boys over there, the boys coming home. The boys who won't come home at all. They're fighting for us. The least we can do is give them something to come back to." The audience was silent. Not the uncomfortable silence of confusion, the reverent silence of understanding. Bogart nodded toward the wings. "There's a soldier watching from backstage right now. I want you to do something for me. I want you to give him the show of his life." And they did. For the next 2 hours, the Pantages Theatre transformed into something more than a venue. It became a gift. Every performer gave everything they had. The comedians were funnier. The singers were more passionate. The dancers moved with a grace that seemed almost impossible. And through it all, Daniel Holloway watched from his chair in the wings. He watched with tears streaming down his face. He watched with a smile that grew wider with every passing minute. He watched like a man who had been drowning and had finally found air. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. Stories like this one, stories of quiet heroism and hidden grace, deserve to be told. Subscribe now. Because the world needs to remember that decency still exists, even in the darkest times. After the show, Bogart found Daniel exactly where he had left him. The young man was still sitting in the chair, still wearing Bogart's jacket, still looking like he could not quite believe what had happened. "How was it?" Bogart asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. "I don't have words. I've never seen anything like that. That's Hollywood for you. We're good at putting on a show." "No." Daniel looked up, his eyes clear for the first time all night. "It wasn't just a show. It was like being reminded that there's still beauty in the world. That there's still kindness. I forgot that. Over there you forget." Bogart pulled up a crate and sat down across from the young man. He lit a cigarette, offered one to Daniel, who declined with a small shake of his head. "Tell me about Indiana," Bogart said, and Daniel did. He talked about the farm where he grew up, the fields of corn that stretched to the horizon, the way the sunset painted the sky orange and purple on summer evenings. He talked about his mother, who made the best apple pie in 3 counties. He talked about his father, a quiet man who showed his love through work rather than words. He talked about his little sister, who was 11 now and probably too tall for him to carry on his shoulders anymore. He talked about enlisting, the day after Pearl Harbor, standing in line at the recruitment office with every other young man in town, the train ride to basic training, the ship across the Atlantic, the beaches of North Africa, the mountains of Italy. He talked about the friends he made, the jokes they told in the trenches, the songs they sang on long marches, the promises they made to each other, promises that some of them would never get to keep. He did not talk about what happened in Italy, not directly, but Bogart could hear it in the spaces between his words. The weight of it, the shadow. "How long have you been home?" Bogart asked. 3 weeks. Feels like 3 years. Feels like 3 minutes. I don't know. Time doesn't work the same anymore. It doesn't. Not after what you've been through. Daniel looked at him curiously. "You understand, don't you? You actually understand. I wasn't in the war, not this one. But I've known loss. I've known what it's like to carry something that won't let you go." They sat in silence for a while. The theater had emptied out. The stagehands were sweeping the stage, turning off the lights one by one. The magic of the evening was fading into memory. "What are you going to do now?" Bogart asked. Daniel shrugged. "Go back to the hospital, I guess, finish healing. Then, I don't know. The farm is waiting. My family is waiting, but I don't know if I'm the same person who left." "You're not. You can't be, but that doesn't mean you're worse, just different." "How do you know?" Bogart smiled. "Because I've played a lot of characters who had to rebuild themselves, and every single time they found something worth fighting for, something worth living for. You will too." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up and touched the jacket still draped over his shoulders. "I should give this back. Keep it." "Sir, I can't. This is probably worth more than—" "It's a jacket. You're a soldier. You're worth more than any piece of clothing I own." Daniel's jaw trembled. He looked away, fighting for composure. "I'm going to tell you something," Bogart said, "and I want you to listen carefully because I don't say things like this often." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "What you did over there, whatever it was, however bad it was, you did it for us, for your family, for your country, for people like me who get to sit in Hollywood and pretend to be heroes, while real heroes like you are out there actually being them. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing to apologize for, you hear me?" Daniel nodded. He could not speak. "And when you go back to Indiana, when you see those cornfields and that sunset and your mother's apple pie, I want you to remember this night. I want you to remember that a theater full of people stood up and cheered for you. That they gave you the best show of their lives because you deserved it, because you're worth it." Bogart stood up. He extended his hand. Daniel took it. His grip was firm, despite his wounds. "Thank you," Daniel whispered. "Thank you for everything. Don't thank me. Just go home, heal, live. That's the only thanks I need." They walked out of the theater together, into the cool December night. The rain had stopped. The streets were wet and gleaming under the streetlights. A few cars drifted past, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Bogart hailed a cab. He gave the driver money for Daniel's fare and the address of the military hospital. "Take care of yourself. Private Holloway." "I will, sir, I promise." The cab pulled away. Bogart stood on the sidewalk watching until the taillights disappeared around the corner. He lit another cigarette. He looked up at the stars, and for a moment, just a moment, he allowed himself to feel proud. January 1944, 3 weeks later. 3. Bogart received a letter. It was written on lined paper in handwriting that was careful but unsteady, like the writer was still learning how to hold a pen again. "Dear Mr. Bogart, I don't know if you remember me, My name is Daniel Holloway. I'm the soldier you found backstage at the Pantages Theatre last month. I'm writing to tell you that I made it home. I got back to Indiana 2 days ago. The farm is the same, the fields are covered in snow now, but I can see the shape of them underneath. My mother cried when she saw me. My father shook my hand and didn't let go for a long time. My sister is 12 now, not 11. I got her age wrong. She's taller than I remember. I'm not healed yet, not completely. The doctors say the wound will take time, and I think they're talking about more than just my side. But I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying. I wanted you to know that I still have your jacket. I know you said to keep it, but it feels wrong somehow. Like I'm holding on to something that belongs to someone else's story. But then I remember what you said, about being worth it, about deserving the show. And I think maybe that's the point. Maybe the jacket isn't about you at all. Maybe it's about who I can become. I don't know if I'll ever be a hero like the ones in your movies, but I'm going to try to be someone my family can be proud of. Someone who doesn't give up. Someone who keeps going even when it's hard. Thank you for that night. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for reminding me that there's still beauty in the world. I hope our paths cross again someday. But if they don't, I want you to know that you changed my life. You gave me something to hold on to when I had nothing. Your friend, Daniel Humphrey Bogart, read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, next to the scripts and the contracts and all the other artifacts of his Hollywood life. He did not cry. Humphrey Bogart was not the crying type, but he sat there for a long time, staring at the drawer, feeling something shift inside his chest, something that felt like meaning. The months passed. The war continued. Bogart made more movies. He traveled with the USO, performing for troops in North Africa and Italy. He saw things that would stay with him forever. The courage of young men facing impossible odds, the quiet dignity of nurses working through the night, the way hope could survive even in the darkest places. And always, in the back of his mind, he thought of Daniel Holloway. He wrote back, of course. A short letter, because Bogart was not the type for long correspondence, but heartfelt. He told Daniel to keep the jacket. He told him that heroes came in all shapes and sizes, and that surviving was its own form of courage. He asked Daniel to write again, to let him know how he was doing. The letters came, slowly at first, then more frequently. Daniel wrote about the farm, about the seasons changing, about the way his wounds were healing, both the visible and the invisible ones. He wrote about going back to church for the first time, about helping his father fix the tractor, about teaching his sister to drive. And he wrote about something else too, a girl named Mary. She worked at the general store in town. She had red hair and freckles and a laugh that sounded like music. Daniel had known her before the war, but only in passing. Now, back home, he found himself making excuses to visit the store, buying things he did not need, lingering by the counter. Mr. Bogart, he wrote, I think I might be falling in love. Is that crazy? After everything that happened? Bogart smiled when he read that letter. He wrote back immediately. Not crazy. Necessary. Love is the only thing that makes any of this worth it. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Summer 1944. Daniel and Mary were engaged. Bogart sent a gift, a silver picture frame engraved with a simple message, for the hero who reminded me what courage looks like. Daniel wrote back, thanking him, telling him that the frame would hold their wedding photograph, telling him that every time he looked at it, he would remember that night at the Pantages Theatre, the night that changed everything, November 1944. The wedding was small, but beautiful. Daniel wore a borrowed suit because his own still did not fit right. Mary wore a white dress her grandmother had worn 50 years before. The ceremony was held in the little church where Daniel had been baptized as a baby. Bogart could not attend. He was overseas with the USO, somewhere in the Pacific, but he sent a telegram that arrived just before the ceremony. To Daniel and Mary, may your life together be filled with the same courage and kindness you've already shown. The world needs more people like you. Congratulations. Daniel read the telegram aloud to the guests. His voice broke on the last line. The world needs more people like you. He had spent so many months feeling broken, feeling less than, feeling like he had left the best parts of himself on some battlefield in Italy. But here was Humphrey Bogart, one of the most famous men in America, telling him that the world needed more people like him. Maybe, Daniel thought, maybe he could start believing it. The war ended in 1945. The celebrations swept across the country like a wave. In Indiana, the church bells rang for 3 hours straight. Daniel and Mary stood on the porch of their farmhouse, watching the fireworks light up the sky over the cornfields. They were expecting their first child, a boy, the doctor said, due in December. Daniel wrote to Bogart with the news. He asked in a postscript that seemed almost shy if Mr. Bogart would consider being the child's godfather. The response came within a week. "I would be honored, but only if you promise to tell him the truth about his old man, that his father is the bravest man I ever met." December 1945. The baby was born on a cold Tuesday morning, with snow falling outside the hospital window. They named him Robert, after Mary's father, who had passed away the year before, but his middle name was Humphrey, Robert Humphrey Holloway. When Bogart found out, he sent another letter. This one was longer than usual. "Dear Daniel, I don't have the words to tell you what this means to me. I've played a lot of characters in my life. Tough guys, romantics, villains, heroes, but I've never felt like I deserved to have my name attached to something real, something pure. Your son will grow up in a different world than the one we knew. The war will be history to him. The sacrifices, the losses, the moments of grace in the darkness. There'll be stories in books. But he'll have you. A father who served his country, who came home when others didn't, who found the courage to love and live again. That's worth more than any movie I could ever make. Teach him well. Teach him that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up every time. Teach him that kindness matters more than fame. Teach him that the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching, but what he does when no one's around, and when he's old enough, Tell him about that night at the Pantages Theatre. Tell him how his father snuck backstage with a wound in his side, just to hear people laugh again. Tell him that's the moment I learned what real courage looks like. I'm proud to share a name with your son. I hope I can live up to it. Your friend, Humphrey Bogart. Daniel kept that letter. He kept all of them. He stored them in a wooden box on the top shelf of his closet, next to the jacket that still smelled faintly of cigarettes and cologne. And as the years passed, as Robert grew from a baby to a boy to a young man, Daniel told him the stories. Not all at once, a little at a time, the way fathers pass down their histories to their sons. He told him about the war, about the friends he lost, about the wounds that healed and the ones that never quite did. He told him about the night at the Pantages Theatre, about a famous actor who took the time to see a wounded soldier when no one else would, about a jacket and a chair and a show that felt like coming back to life. He told him about the letters, the words of encouragement that arrived at just the right moment, again and again, like someone was watching over him from across the country. And Robert listened. He listened with the wide eyes of a child who knows he is hearing something important, something that will shape who he becomes. If you've been moved by this story, if you felt something stir in your chest as you listened, I want you to do something for me. Leave a comment right now. Just write, "Kindness changes everything." Because that's what this story is about. That's what Daniel learned that night in Hollywood. And that's what I hope you'll carry with you after the video ends. The years continued to pass. The world changed in ways no one could have predicted. Television came. The studio system crumbled. New stars rose and old ones faded. Humphrey Bogart made some of his greatest films in those years. The African Queen, The Caine Mutiny, Sabrina. He won an Academy Award. He married Lauren Bacall. He became a father himself. A son named Stephen, a daughter named Leslie, but he never forgot Daniel Holloway. The letters continued, less frequently now, but no less meaningful. Birthday cards, Christmas notes, the occasional photograph, Robert's first day of school, Daniel and Mary's 10th anniversary, the new barn they built on the South Field. And then in 1956 the letters stopped coming, not from Daniel, from Bogart. He was sick. The cigarettes that had been his constant companion for decades had finally extracted their price. The diagnosis came in February. By summer, he was too weak to write. Daniel found out through the newspapers like everyone else. Humphrey Bogart was dying. He sat on his porch that night, watching the fireflies dance over the cornfields, and he wept, not for himself, for the man who had seen him when he was invisible, the man who had reminded him that he was worth something when he felt worthless. He wanted to go to Hollywood, to see Bogart one last time, to say thank you one more time, but the farm needed him. Mary needed him. Robert, who was 11 now and struggling in school, needed him. So he wrote a letter instead. It took him 3 days. He wrote and rewrote every line, trying to find the right words, trying to capture everything he felt. "Dear Mr. Bogart, I heard the news. I don't know what to say. I've tried to write this letter 100 times, and every time the words come out wrong. You saved my life. Not just that night at the theater, though that night was the beginning. You saved me every time you wrote. Every time you reminded me that I mattered. Every time you treated me like a friend instead of a fan. I was a broken man when I snuck into that theater. I had convinced myself that the best part of my life was over, that I had nothing left to give, that I would never feel whole again. You showed me I was wrong. You showed me that kindness exists even in the darkest places, that strangers can become family, that the wounds we carry don't have to define us. My son is 11 years old. His name is Robert Humphrey Holloway. He is smart and kind and curious, and every single day I try to be the man you believed I could be. I try to be worthy of his middle name. I don't know if you'll read this letter. I don't know if you're able to, but I needed to write it anyway. I needed you to know that your kindness mattered, that it changed everything. Thank you for seeing me that night. Thank you for giving me back my life. I will never forget you. None of us will. Your friend, always, Daniel Holloway. He mailed the letter on a Monday. He did not know if it would arrive in time. January 14th, 1957. Humphrey Bogart died at his home in Los Angeles. He was 57 years old. The funeral was private, as he had requested, only family and close friends. The public gathered outside, thousands of them, paying their respects to the man who had given them so much joy. Daniel did not attend. He was in Indiana, standing in the kitchen of his farmhouse, listening to the news on the radio. Mary held his hand. Robert sat at the table, old enough to understand the weight of the moment. He was your friend, Robert said. It was not a question. Yes, he was. The man I'm named after. The middle name. Yes. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, what was he like? Daniel smiled through his tears. He was exactly like his movies, tough on the outside. But underneath he had a heart as big as the world. 3 weeks later, a package arrived. It was from Lauren Bacall. Inside was a short note and a small box. Dear Mr. Holloway, my husband received your letter. He read it the night before he passed. He could not respond, and he was too weak to write, but he asked me to send you something. He kept all of your letters, every single one. They were in his desk drawer right beside our wedding photo. He wanted you to have this. He said you would understand. With gratitude, Lauren Bacall. Daniel opened the box. Inside was a tie clip. Silver, simple, elegant. The same one Bogart had worn that night at the Pantages Theatre in 1943. Daniel held it in his palm, feeling the weight of it, the history. 14 years of friendship, compressed into a single object. He understood. He clipped it to his tie that Sunday before church. Mary noticed, but did not say anything. Robert noticed too. That's new, the boy said. It's not new. It's very old. It belonged to a friend. The friend you lost? No. Daniel smiled, touching the clip gently. The friend I found. The tie clip stayed with Daniel for the rest of his life. He wore it to every important occasion. Weddings, graduations, funerals. He wore it to Robert's high school graduation in 1963 and his college graduation in 1967. He wore it to his own daughter's wedding in 1970, when Robert's sister Emily married a young lawyer from Indianapolis, and every time someone asked about it, Daniel told the story. The story of a night in Hollywood, a wounded soldier, a famous actor, a jacket and a chair and a show that felt like being reborn. The story of how kindness changed everything. Robert grew up to be a good man. He became a teacher like his mother had always hoped. He taught history at the high school in town, telling students about wars and treaties and the moments that shaped the world. But his favorite stories were the ones his father had told him. The ones about Humphrey Bogart. He would pull out the letters sometimes, the ones his father had kept in the wooden box. He would read them to his students, his voice catching on certain lines. The measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching, but what he does when no one's around. That line especially. He read that line 1,000 times and it never lost its power. Daniel lived until 1982. He was 79 years old, surrounded by his family, in the farmhouse where he had been born and raised. Mary had passed 2 years earlier, quietly in her sleep, and Daniel had spent those final years missing her with every breath. On his last day, he asked Robert to bring him the jacket. It was old now, worn and faded. The lapels were out of style. The lining was frayed, but Daniel clutched it to his chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Tell the story, he whispered to his son. Promise me you'll tell the story. I promise. Dad, and tell them. Tell them that decency matters, that kindness isn't weakness, that one person can change another person's entire life just by paying attention, just by caring. I'll tell them. Daniel closed his eyes. He was smiling. I can hear them, Bobby. I can hear them laughing. The way they laughed that night. Who? Dad? Everyone. The whole theater. They were laughing. For me. Those were his last words. Robert kept his promise. He told the story at his father's funeral. He told it to his own children, and later, to his grandchildren. He donated the jacket to the local historical society, along with the letters and the tie clip, so that future generations could see them. A small plaque was placed beside the display, the Humphrey Bogart collection, donated by the Holloway family in memory of Daniel Holloway, 1925-1982, a soldier, a friend, a reminder that kindness changes everything. Every year on December 15th, the anniversary of that night at the Pantages Theatre, Robert would visit the display. He would stand there looking at the jacket and the letters and the tie clip, remembering his father's stories, and he would think about what it meant, what it really meant. Two men, one famous, one forgotten, connected by a single act of compassion on a single night in 1943. Bogart could have walked past that door. He could have ignored the sounds from the storage room, gone on stage, done his show, never known that a wounded soldier was hiding in the darkness. But he didn't. He stopped. He listened. He cared. And that choice, that simple, human choice, rippled outward through decades, touching lives that Bogart would never know about, creating connections that would outlast them both. That's what kindness does. It doesn't just help the person in front of you. It sends something out into the world. Something invisible but powerful, something that can travel through time and space and reach places you never imagined. Daniel Holloway was not famous. He never would be. But he raised a son who bore Humphrey Bogart's name. He raised a family that valued decency and compassion and the quiet courage of everyday life. He carried the lessons of that night forward, passing them down like heirlooms, ensuring that they would never be forgotten. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, maybe Bogart knows. Maybe he understands that the best role he ever played wasn't Rick Blaine or Sam Spade or Charlie Allnut. It was himself, on a December night in 1943, when he chose to see a wounded soldier instead of walking past. The display at the Historical Society still stands today. Visitors come from all over the state to see it. School children on field trips, veterans who recognize something of themselves in Daniel's story, ordinary people looking for proof that decency still matters, and they find it. Every time, in a faded jacket and a bundle of letters and a silver tie clip that carries the weight of a friendship that changed two lives forever. If you watched this far, it's because you felt something, because this story touched you the way it touched Daniel that night in Hollywood. So I'm asking you to do something. Leave a comment, right now. Just write, "I watched this far." That's all. Those 4 words will tell me that you're here, that you care, that you understand what this story is really about. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next story, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be struggling, someone who might feel invisible, because that's how it works. That's how kindness spreads, one person at a time, one story at a time, one act of compassion at a time. Humphrey Bogart found a wounded soldier backstage, and what he did next changed the night forever. But more than that, more than any movie, more than any award or accolade, he reminded us what it means to be human. He reminded us that we have the power to change someone's life, just by paying attention, just by caring. He reminded us that kindness changes everything, and that's a lesson worth remembering. That's a lesson worth passing on. So go, be kind, pay attention, see the people around you, really see them. You never know whose life you might change. You never know whose night you might transform forever. They don't make men like Humphrey Bogart anymore, but maybe, just maybe, we can try to be a little more like him. One act of kindness at a time. Like this video if it moved you. Share it with someone who needs it. And remember, the world is changed by people who notice, by people who stop when they could walk past, by people who see the wounded soldiers hiding in the storage rooms of life. Be that person. For Daniel Holloway, for Humphrey Bogart, for everyone who ever felt invisible and needed someone to see them. Be the reason someone believes in kindness again. That's all any of us can do. That's all any of us need to do. And that right there, is how we honor the legacy of the men who came before us, not with statues or monuments or fancy speeches, with action, with compassion, with the simple, profound decision to care. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, thank you for being here, and thank you, and from the bottom of my heart, for being the kind of person who stays until the end. Until next time, remember the story of Daniel and Bogart. Remember what kindness can do. and go make someone's night unforgettable.